It's time once again to break down the wild Apple news of the week. We got some new info on the Apple Watch Series 8, some interesting news on Airpods Pro 2, of course, all the final leaks coming in on iPhone 14, and also we want to discuss the rest of the year, the other products set to happen at a second event happening this fall. It's going to be a really busy fall for Apple, even though right now things are just slow as molasses. Is that the phrase? Slow as molasses? Yeah. It's a slow time in the Apple rumor mill. I'm joined, of course, as always, by Matt Gonzalez, co-host extraordinaire of the Apple Circle podcast. So thinking, Matt, we should do maybe around the iPhone launch some kind of live interactive element. Maybe it's either a live on the YouTube channel or we do like a Twitter Spaces, or I feel like we should do something special around maybe like iPhone launch day or something.
Maybe like when, iPhone launch day, maybe during the keynote, after the keynote, maybe we'll go live, do a live episode recording or something like that. Yeah, I agree. We can do that.
Mix it up a little bit. And always, if we want to hear from, if I can talk, if we want to hear from you guys, if you hear the screaming baby in the background, I'm sorry.
I can, but that's all right.
Seems to happen around here. If you guys do have questions, comments on the baby or anything else, you can let us know on the Apple Circle podcast hotline. The number is 949-354-3508. Let us know how you'd like to connect with us. How's your life going? Are you working from home as well? How's that element going in your life? And Apple news. Are you excited for what's coming this fall? You got any buying questions, advice? And also, how would you like to see us interact with you? We'd love to interact with you, and we'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. So let us know at that number. Also, of course, we've got the Apple Circle podcast channel on YouTube. We're recording this and publishing it wherever podcasts are listened to. So, Matt, what do you use for your podcast consumption? What app do you use?
I've kind of switched back and forth. I used to have Overcast, which I guess I still have. I still paid for it for the year. But mainly I listen on YouTube. I haven't really been listening to very many podcasts lately that aren't available on YouTube. So that's kind of what I've been going to. I haven't listened to audio only in a while, but yeah, what about you?
If there's a video component, I always love YouTube because I love just like, even if I don't see it all the time, just to kind of glance and see like that visual component, exactly. I think is cool. For audio, I use Overcast. I tried using Spotify, but like the syncing never really worked. And that would always like, there's no worse feeling than listening to a podcast for like 30 minutes in the car and then going on a walk or something. And then you open it up and it's like not synced. It's horrible. So that's my side note for the day. Is it Overcast? I use Overcast on the iPhone. You use YouTube. I use YouTube.
But what did I say for the podcast app? What did I say?
You said you used to use Overcast.
Okay, I did. I just wasn't sure. Did I get the app name right? Because you said Overcast. I was like, that's the one.
I use Overcast. Okay. It's by Marco Arment, I think. Obviously, like big time Apple developer. It's a really great app. But I just was curious because I'm listening to more, and I'm in the Better Call Saul universe, and that show's like almost done. It's like I'm listening to all the podcasts, and I've got them all in Overcast. And anyways, just thinking about got podcasts on the mind. So as we're doing this podcast, let's talk about the latter half of Apple for 2022. We already broke down iPhone 14. We talked AirPods Pro 2. We talked Apple Watch last week, though a couple of interesting tidbits came out today that we should talk about. But the main stuff is going to be about the second event. According to Mark Gurman, good old Mark Gurman at Bloomberg, Apple might hold two events, as we sort of speculated before, a September event, which is for iPhone, Apple Watch, and hopefully AirPods, and then an October event for iPads and Macs. So before we get into that, which we'll spend the chunk of the show on that, a couple interesting tidbits on iPhone 14. So some sketchy, not so sketchy rumors came out that suggested that maybe we'd see a purple color for the iPhone 14 Pro. I take it or leave it on that. I spent the money on like the baby blue one or whatever. What is it, Pacific Blue, whatever they called it? Sierra Blue. And I kind of regret it. Like I wasn't impressed. I kind of like the idea of like having the one for B-roll that like you knew was different. But the more I use it, I'm like, I don't really like this color. The green obviously looks nice. That they just did a mid-cycle release on that. So that wasn't a launch date color. But purple would be interesting. Not sure if I'd pick that up. And then also some more sort of controversial news this morning was about the pricing. So I think what Ming-Chi Kuo is saying, Apple analyst Ming-Chi Kuo, is that pricing will go up about 10 to 15% depending on the model. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, we're looking at like a $100 bump. So $1099 for the 14 Pro and then $1199. No, am I saying that right? Yeah, $1199 for the 14 Pro Max, though I did see a little note, I'm not sure if this is true or not, that Apple could bump the storage size of the base model to sort of justify that, which I think was good to see. But $100 more for your Pro and iPhone. How are you feeling about that?
I mean, isn't that just the world we live in today? Like, I'm not surprised in any way, shape, or form. I will say, though, Samsung just revealed their Fold and Flip, their next versions, and they didn't raise the price on those, surprisingly. So I guess it's possible to release a new phone and not have to raise the price, but Apple being Apple, it's not surprising to me that they're going to be raising the prices. Is it fun? No, but I guess my worry is, well, I guess that's kind of how inflation works, is it very rarely goes down. You don't really get deflation. So I was going to say, like, once they raise the price, then that's just going to be the price going forward. But I guess it's kind of how it always works. I was thinking about this the other day, like, we kind of forget, but when the first iPhone came out, the very first iPhone, it was so expensive, but I believe it was only like $700. And then now, you know, obviously it's the Pro model, but they kind of sneakily, when they announced the iPhone 10, made the base price of an iPhone for like the current gen. They made it $1,000, and no one really cared. I mean, people care, but like they pulled that one over on us, so I wouldn't be surprised if they just kind of do that again.
I'm trying to see what the price was for the original iPhone. Of course, our lovely Mac tracker app. I don't see the price in here, but I think it was something. It was like $400 or $500, $600. And, you know, we've talked about this before with the whole carrier subsidy thing, and really how in the US, everybody's all looking at the monthly price, and that's what it was, and the 2-year contracts. But yeah, it's getting more expensive. And we've seen Apple, which is a little atypical, raise prices on different things. The MacBook Air base model is more expensive. I think, is that $100 more than it was? It's $1099, right? Or $1199. So it's gone up in price. The iPhone SE went up $29. Usually Apple has been known for giving you more features at the same price. They don't raise prices all that often. Usually they keep it in line and they just give you more stuff, and that's sort of how Apple works. This would be interesting, though. And I can say that, you know, whether due to inflation or supply chain issues or whatever that is, I get that. Also, I mean, not to say this is a good thing, but Apple hasn't raised the prices on the iPhones in quite a while, at least the Pros. They've been $999 since the 10, right? So it's been a number of years. So as things adjust, is the 14 going to be worth the, $1,100, extra $100 now for a Pro? I don't know about that, though double the storage would be nice to see in the base model. But interesting. I feel like for most people, if you're already spending the money for the Pro, you're probably still going to buy it, especially once the carriers have their incentives and their deals in there. What's this going to work out to, like an extra $2 a month? Not to say that it's great that Apple's raising prices, but the way they're going to spin this is going to be a perfect spin, because they're just going to say, oh, you know, it's $10.99 or $34.99 a month, or whatever the math works.
Honestly,
out.
I wouldn't.
Definitely.
Yeah, I wouldn't even be surprised if they're not even going to make any allusions to it or anything like that. They'll probably just say these are the prices. That's what it is. They're not even going to try to justify it or anything. It's just those are the prices of the new iPhone.
So slightly higher price there. We also saw from Apple analyst Ming-Chi Kuo a little note on AirPods Pro 2. So we had heard that Apple was going to make the switch over to USB-C, and they're going to do this big exodus from Lightning to USB-C. That's happening, but now Ming-Chi Kuo says that the AirPods Pro 2 will ship with a Lightning case, and then USB-C will be available later next year. Now, what's unclear is Apple going to do the whole thing with like the wireless charging case where, oh, there's USB-C case available for an extra cost, you can buy that to swap it out? Or is it going to be Lightning to start, and then once the USB-C case supply is at an amount that's, you know, adequate for Apple, then they'll just do a silent switch over? How do you think that's going to work?
I think they'll switch it over, because that's kind of what they did with the wireless charging case. They started selling the wireless charging case, and for us that didn't have it, who had the original AirPods, you could upgrade if you wanted, but then going forward, if you bought it, it came with a wireless charging case. Although they did offer a version without it for a cheaper price. So yeah, I think at the very least they're going to be selling a package that comes with it. Will they also still offer a Lightning version? I'm going to say no. I think they'll probably just ditch Lightning altogether. Because if you're moving to USB-C, like, who are you trying to fool here? Just move over. We don't need Lightning. Like, get rid of it. Otherwise, why are you making the switch to begin with?
Yeah, I feel like once they make that move, they're going to stick with it. Though, interesting that they're not going to do it on launch. I wonder what happened, whether it was an issue with the supply or what it was. I mean, hopefully, kudos to Apple. I wouldn't want to delay AirPods Pro 2 over this, but it is interesting that they're going to do this. And I wonder if maybe when they do it with the iPhone 15, once that switches to USB-C, then, okay.
I think that's what it is, because
we're going to make that move everywhere.
Exactly, because I think if they do it with the AirPods, it's pretty obvious that they're also going to do it with the iPhone, because then that's the only product that doesn't have it. So, well, I guess they have a few accessories like the keyboard and stuff that doesn't have it. But yeah, I think they're going to wait for the iPhone, and then they're going to say, I mean, once the iPhone is Lightning, there's zero reason for Lightning to exist. So, yeah, I think that's what they're waiting for. That's why that's the rumor that with the iPhone 15, that's when we're finally going to see USB-C, and then only makes sense for it to follow with the other products.
Another interesting tidbit of news that came out this week that's, I feel like, I don't want to say it's got the internet by storm because it seems like it's only a small subset of people that care about it, is the Google campaign. That Google came out with this campaign, how Apple needs to adopt RCS and that they're ruining phones and experiences. And we talked about this before, the whole blue bubble, green bubble debate that really only seems to be a problem here in America because that's where the fragmentation is so prevalent. Any initial thoughts on this matter? Is this, to me, it's like, it's just Google being Google. It's just, what are they going to do?
Well, it's like, here's my actual thinking on it is, I get why Google would want Apple to be more cross-compatible because that's more users that they could then have, interacting with Android devices. If that's not an issue, then there's more of a chance that they're going to be buying an Android device, or specifically a Pixel, I guess. But my issue is, like, I'm just waiting for Google to answer to iMessage. They've kind of done that. RCS was kind of supposed to be that answer, but it really hasn't done anything. Like, I haven't thought about RCS. I haven't cared about it. And we've been waiting for years for Google to just make an answer to iMessage. And it seems like they're not really going to. They're just going to make the same apps that they always do. It's just going to have RCS support, which it currently does. And then they're going to hope that Apple, incorporates it as well. But I don't see what the benefit for Apple to do it is, especially at this point. Like 5 years ago, it makes sense. Like maybe Apple, there's an argument why Apple should adopt cross-compatibility. But today they have such a dominance in the iMessage space. Like why? There's no reason.
Well, that's the thing too, is that it's sort of to Apple's advantage to keep people in the iMessage ecosystem as it is. So for Google, like you said, you make a good point. Like if they did this, I'd be like, hey, who needs iMessage coming over and buy an Android phone? And this is Google trying to paint Apple as a bad guy. And I get the reason they should adopt RCS and this and that. And it's not, this is not the same as putting iMessage on Android. It's just adopting a better carrier standard. But, Apple, what's the benefit to them? Really nothing. There's only downsides here, mostly because that just gives Android users a better experience on their device.
Right.
So
it just makes it more seamless for the Android users interacting with the iPhone, but that's not what Apple wants. So, I think this is the one that they're going to hold out on the longest, if ever. Like if they ever give in, I don't even know. But it's not like they're completely against Android because they have the Apple Music app for Android. They have I had it in my head a second ago. What was it?
Music.
FaceTime. It's not really Android like an app, but it does work. Like they finally opened that up. So it's not like they're completely against cross compatibility or anything like that. It's just for iMessage, there's no point because RCS is just trying to be iMessage, and Apple's like, well, we already have that. So.
Well, I feel like there's always Google. I feel like, has Google done this before? I feel like every couple of months there's always some big publicity stunt. Like, hey, Apple, you're being bad. You need to do this. And I get both sides too. Like, it'd be nice for Apple to adopt this and as a standard, but it's always somebody's got to win, somebody's got to lose. Like Google's not doing this from the kindness of their heart. They're doing this because they want Apple to do this so they can win and get more users. Like it's not like nobody's the good guy here. Like Google's not the good guy because they're trying to take down Apple, and Apple's not the good guy because they're trying to get people to be in iMessage. Like everybody's got an agenda here, which I just think is funny how if you think Google is doing this because they care about you, you are severely mistaken.
Oh yeah, there's a reason, and it clearly is because they want more users on Android. But I don't think it's going to happen. The other, or at least another piece of kind of iPhone related news, which is not, well, it's news, but it's not really rumors. We actually have it, and that's on the iPhone on iOS 16 beta. I forgot what beta we're on. Are we on 4, 6, something like that? But the battery indicator, the percentage indicator, is back, which we kind of talked about this last week when we were talking about the iPhone 14, how it would be great if they would give us more information in those little ear sections. And we both never thought that would happen. Well, it kind of happened. They actually brought it back, which is very surprising. It seems like it's a controversial move for whatever reason. I don't know why people care that much, but the design of it is, questionable. I'm not exactly sure if I love it that much. What's really interesting is that when you don't have it on, the battery, shows you visually how much is there by kind of, the indicator kind of gets smaller and smaller as you use battery and eventually turns red. If you go into low power mode, it turns yellow. Now it's just a solid battery icon with a number in the middle of the percentage. So it's like at a glance, you have to actually read the number. You can't just get a visual representation of what the battery is. So I think that's why some people didn't really like it that much, is the design of it. But I guess one question here, because it's back, do you think that this is just the design that we're going to have? Or do you think on the iPhone 14 Pro, I guess, because it's going to have the circular eye notch thing, do you think it's going to stick this way, or do you think it's going to kind of be next to it and we're going to actually have more information in that space?
I'm hoping they can do something with that extra screen real estate to make this more useful. I'm really curious as to why they decided to bring it back randomly and why it just sort of popped up. And I don't know if you saw the tweet going around today about the different ways, like Apple does this, which is like what you mentioned. It's like no matter how your battery drains until it gets low, it just shows like the same like amount filled in there.
Yeah.
And there are other ways they could do it. I don't know like why that is and why they chose to just kind of spring on us in like a late stage beta. I think it's beta 5.
Such a weird time to do
it. My hope would be that they do something with that extra screen real estate. I'm hoping that, I guess there's two ways they could do it. Last year with the smaller notch, that was like a pretty big deal as a rumor. Apple really just glanced by it and didn't say anything. It's like, oh, we made the Face ID components or the Face ID system smaller, and that was it. So there's totally a world that exists that Apple goes, this is the new design. We were able to shrink the Face ID system by 40% or whatever it is, and they just move on. Or they're able to say, hey, we shrunk it so you could have this, or you could have extra screen real estate to do this, or I'm not sure what they would do. I've seen some concepts on Twitter, but like just to either put it next to it or have other little information on there. I feel like having that screen real estate back is such a prominent difference in terms of design. It would be nice to utilize that space with different things. I don't know how they would do it or exactly what I'd want to see in those little corners, like in those little ears, but I'd like to see that space be put to better use, especially on the home screen, than just like empty space, if that makes sense.
Yeah, just seems like there's more that they could do and get creative with it and make a case for why that is there. I guess at this point, like, we're all used to it, so it doesn't matter for the notch. But now that they're switching from the notch, like, why? Other than because they need to make a change. So, but I'm not hopeful that they're going to actually do anything with it. I think they're just going to do very similarly to what they did now. They're like, oh, we were able to rearrange it and look how much more screen you get, but you can't actually do anything with that screen. I still think that's what they're going to do. I have it turned on my phone, and I'm kind of used to it. It does look like, when I just glance at it, I'm not used to looking at it, but it's nice to have the percentage there. There's always the argument, like, should you have percentage on any of your devices? Because especially like with the EV, like in a Tesla, you can either have how many miles you have, or you can have like the percentage. And I know for us, we've kind of found that if you go to the percentage, it actually gives you less range anxiety, because like 20% sounds better than 20 miles. 20 miles sounds like you're about to die in your car, but 20%, you're like, yeah, I can do 20%. That's easy. And kind of the same principle here. It's like when you see 20% on your phone, you're like, man, my phone's about to die. But if you see it just got to the red, then you're like, I got plenty of time left. So
100%.
I don't know. Yeah, it's a psychological thing, but I guess more importantly, it's good that they give you the option. And I don't know why it took them. How long ago? 2018 was the iPhone 10. So it's been 4 years, going to be 5 once this phone's actually out. I don't know why it took them that long to actually figure out how to do this, but it seems like it's finally here.
It's funny how they're like, oh, we're not going to put a weather app on the iPad until it's like something different and, we get it right.
It's the same exact
basically
app.
the same blend of thing. It's like with the battery icon. I don't know if they ever said why they took it away, but it's like, couldn't you have done this day one? It's like Apple makes some weird decisions that I don't get. But I will say this makes me, it's like, makes me kind of miss the beta life and like wonder, should I join the beta? Because now it's the public beta's out. And I guess speaking of betas, I just read before we started recording, that Apple is now cracking down on those beta sharing sites. So they're like very vague on the specifics, but basically it sounds like there's some legal stuff behind the scenes and Apple's cracking down on them, which in all honesty, I feel like those are only, people are only using them like I'd love to see the traffic on those sites, because I feel like it was WWDC day and like the week after, that's when they hit their peak, because everything sort of falls off when the public beta comes out, and then you can get it for free officially. So
that's what I was thinking. Like, what do you even need this today for? Like, I guess unless you can't, if you can't sign up for an Apple ID, but like, why? I don't. That's
or you got a somehow hacked account like you do, which we still don't know the mystery to that. So we'll see.
I'm not even going to touch it. I'm just going to hope it keeps working.
All right, so getting into some more of the pressing news of the week, we heard a couple of interesting things from Mark Gurman over at Bloomberg in his weekly rundown of Apple news. And the big one here is Apple is going to hold 2 events. They could hold 2 events this fall. One in September focused on the iPhone and AirPods and Apple. Well, he didn't say AirPods. We assume AirPods, but Apple Watch and iPhone for September. And then an October event for iPads and Macs. And it seems like there's enough to happen at an October event, like there's enough for them to hold an event, though we don't know specifics on exactly what they could release, because there's a lot of rumors on what we could see. Funny enough, I was going through this for an Apple Circle video, and okay, so what could we see, in the fall? And with the iPad Pro, the rumors have taken such a drastic turn that I am so unenthusiastic about the iPad Pro that I almost could not care less. It's probably M2. That seems like it's going to be it, because remember we had heard a redesign was coming, then that doesn't seem like it's happening, and the glass back, this and that,
wireless charging.
We know that OLED is still too far out. We know that Mini LED is not coming to the 11-inch, at least according to display guru Ross Young. If they only do the M2 chip, what is really the point of a refreshed iPad besides just the chip inside? I'm trying to think what else they could do, and I almost think Apple has sort of boxed themselves in, because they're going to put this new processor in, and they're going to talk about this great silicon, but there's no convincing reason for the iPad to have the silicon, because it doesn't really do anything with that silicon. The iPad OS doesn't do anything special. What can you do? I can have an extra 2 windows open in Stage Manager or something. I don't know. I'm feeling unenthusiastic about iPad Pro. I feel like they're in a tough situation with that, because I don't know what else they could do besides M2. And really what the benefit is of the M2 is yet to be seen as well.
Well, yeah, no, I think there's stuff that they could do with it, but we're just not hearing anything even close to it. Like, okay, the M2's here, so now, well, this isn't really M2, but like, it would be great what if they added MagSafe, not the iPhone version, but the Mac version to the iPad? That'd be nice. I guess we did hear a rumor that maybe there'd be 4 pins on the back instead of 3, which was just, I guess, so it could power more things or something like that. Like, no real reason. Like, it's not going to change anything. Maybe they can make the keyboard case better, so that maybe it can do data transfers through the USB-C port, or had better angles. Honestly, that's kind of it. I'm trying to think. Everything else is just software, because yes, Stage Manager is nice, but it makes what I already did on the iPad a little easier, but it doesn't change what I already did on the iPad. It's the same stuff. It just changes how I do that. So, but I guess, like, I see it from both. The more I think about it, I do see it from both angles, which is, on one hand, it's like, okay, the iPad is what it is, and this is just, it's a better version of it. And then on the other hand, I'm like, well, what? I kind of lost my thought, but like, what do I actually want? And I can't think of anything except for some pro apps. But even then, I'm like, okay, even if that happens, is it going to make me need to upgrade to the newest device? The only reason would be if, for whatever reason, if like Final Cut only worked on the M2 chip, then I would upgrade. But as soon as I upgraded, then I wouldn't upgrade again until they made a good case for it. Like, it's just so confusing.
Yeah, I don't know what else they could do with it. Maybe it's just gotten so good that there's not a lot they have to do. But it seems like right now M2 is going to be the sort of the centerpiece for that device, and we don't really know what else could change. I'd love to see 11-inch Mini LED, though. I don't think it's Apple's fault that's not happening. I think it's probably a supply chain issue. But that would be cool. But that's sort of what we know about iPad Pro, so we could just sort of put that on the shelf, that's probably coming, but who knows what else could change with that. One of the more interesting rumors this week was an allegedly CAD render of a new base iPad, which would very much take a lot of the DNA from the iPad Pro and the iPad Mini, but still keep some of the lower end traditional Apple style choices. So what we saw, according, I think it was My Smart Price or one of those websites, a relatively reliable source, showed off this render of a flat-edged industrial design 10-inch base iPad that would have 5G, it'd have USB-C, which would be great to see, but it would have a home button, like an actual home button, not a Touch ID power button, but an actual home button with Touch ID, and then presumably it'd have still like a lower-end screen and stuff. What are your thoughts on Apple sort of upping the base iPad a little bit to give a little bit of a new design? Do you think that's worthwhile? And do you think we're actually going to see that this fall? Because we just got a new base iPad last fall, and I thought they usually waited a little while between updates on that. So I'm surprised we'd see a year-to-year update so fast.
Well, I mean, I guess I would wonder, because the current iPad base model that we have, the only difference from the last one, I believe, is the processor, right? Did they change anything else?
I don't think so. I think they don't like the accessories work with it now. I'm trying
to remember if that was this update or if it was the update before. But I know at some point they added like Apple Pencil support and keyboard support and stuff like that. So maybe that was this one. I can't quite remember. But either way, the iPads are very similar. But this one seems like it will be very different. The cynical part of me would be saying that they need to up the price, so it's like now's the perfect time to, sell this iPad for $400 instead of $329, and since it's new, not as many people are going to care. Well, I guess that's a question. If they do this redesign, do you think it's going to cost the same, $329?
I mean, if we're looking at the current Apple of 2022, it seems like everything's going up in price. So, what is it? It's $329 now. I mean, okay, I guess here's the question. I'm assuming they're probably going to raise the price. Don't know if that's the right move, but let's say they do that. What is the most acceptable price point for what is supposed to be an entry-level base iPad? Because I could see them going to $399. Maybe it's $349. Maybe they split the difference there and do $349, which still seems a little expensive. But what do you think that ceiling is for a base iPad in terms of price? Where people, they really just want a basic iPad. They probably don't even care about the design. So, which makes it even more confusing.
Yeah, I mean, I think $400 is probably the highest to go there, because then what is the iPad Air is what, 600, something like that, or is it 700? I can't quite remember, but I think it's in the 600 range, maybe even $599, something like that. So that's getting awfully close to that. And then when you put those next to each other, the iPad Air seems like a much better value just for what you're getting, I think at least. Plus you can use it with like the Magic Keyboard and stuff. But I think that makes sense. Maybe $349, kind of what they did with the iPhone SE. They raised the price just a little bit, enough to make their margins, but not enough where it's not worth it anymore. So I think $349 makes sense as a price. I think maybe equally as probable $379. I think that's also very possible. I don't think it'll be $399 though. I think that's too close to $400. But that's just my guess. In terms of the iPad though, I mean, this is just not an iPad that I care about that much, because I don't have anyone in my life that would need this over an iPad Air. The iPad Air is just a better purchase overall, I think, in my opinion, for the people that I would be recommending it to. But if you have a kid, if you're maybe a grandparent or something who just needs something that they can answer emails on or search the web, go on Facebook, that kind of stuff, this is going to be a good option. I don't think it's going to be any worse than what we have now. I guess the only thing I wish it has, which I didn't look close enough to see if this is part of the rumor, but the only thing I wish they fix, which I don't think they will, is I hope it has a laminated display. Yeah. Because that's the one thing where looking at the base iPad, you can really tell a difference that screen is just, because it's not the quality of the screen, it's the fact that there's such a big gap between the glass and the screen. I don't know why they can't do a laminated display for a cheaper price, but that's the one thing I hope they fix.
I wonder what the breakdown is of iPad sales. I mean, I know these are getting bought by educational institutions and like corporations. Like it's just like a good, cheap tablet that like you can rely on and use. But I wonder how many people buy the Air or the Pro, and I wonder what that split is. Because I feel like the iPad Pro, you see it all the time in the tech community, but you don't see it a lot, like actual day-to-day people using it. And what I'd still love to see, which I think makes a lot of sense, is, we've heard a rumor about this, is a larger screen base model, sort of like the iPhone 14 Max. Apple does a Max version of the iPad. Like my mom, for example, She has like an older generation iPad Pro, like the Gen 1. She loves it. She loves the big screen. That's for the main thing to her is how big is the screen. And I feel like with the iPad now, if you wanted to get her a new one, which I'd love to do, it's almost like everything would be a downgrade unless I got her the 12.9-inch iPad Pro, which is very expensive. And also, she doesn't need all that stuff. She doesn't care about mini LED. She doesn't care about ProMotion. She doesn't care about the LiDAR, the cameras. She just wants a bigger screen experience. I think that there definitely is room in here for an iPad Max. I don't know where that, or I guess I'm not going to call it that because they have got different screen sizes to different offerings, at least with the Pro. So maybe they throw it in there with the Air, but I think that would be nice to see. Though that's probably not going to come this year, maybe next year.
Yeah, and I think it makes more sense that it would be an iPad Air Max, that's a dumb name, but a bigger version of the iPad Air than it does to make a bigger version of the base iPad because I don't know, it just doesn't make sense. It seems like the base iPad is really like you need an iPad, but you don't want to spend any money, so you get the base iPad. Everything else, it's like now you have options. So it makes more sense for me that it would be on the Air. And I agree though, because jumping up to that 12.9-inch iPad Pro, I mean that's a commitment. Like you really have to want the iPad Pro for that. So yeah, it'd be nice to see that, and I don't see why they wouldn't do that. It makes sense to me.
So the other thing besides iPads is Macs, and we've got a couple of different Macs here that we could see before the end of 2022. And I don't know how many they're going to do. I'm trying to think what this event would entail, because you think of, okay, iPhone 14, Apple Watch, AirPods. Those are three like pretty substantial products that could take some good time to explain and go through. With this iPad stuff, I feel like they could fly through this. I feel like there's not a whole lot to talk about. So I don't know what they would fill this event with besides new Macs. And when it comes to new Macs, there's like three options. There is a rumor that we could see just a spec bump to the MacBook Pro. So you'd have M2 Pro, M2 Max chips, which would make sense. Rumors of maybe a new Mac Mini, though now it seems like that might happen next year. And then the Mac Pro, which is supposed to get the M2 chip. How do you think they're going to fill out this event? Because now the more I think about it, the more I think that this doesn't constitute a second event in the fall. Yeah,
that's kind of the question. Because they're not going to do, like you said, the MacBook Pro is not going to be here until, because it hasn't even been a year since that's been out, so we got that. I'm just trying to think in my head, like, which ones make sense. I think it makes sense to finally see maybe a Mac Mini, and then maybe an iMac Pro or a 27-inch iMac. Other than that, I don't really know, and those aren't even rumored. Those are just my guess. So, because I don't think we're going to see Mac Pro, because that's going to be the M2 quote Extreme, and that, I don't think we're going to see that before we see a M2 Pro or Max or Ultra. Yeah, you're right. Actually, the more we think about it, even though we're supposed to be seeing Max, what are we supposed to be seeing?
I mean, I feel like a lot of stuff could be like just a silent spec bump on this. Well, I guess Apple, there is an opportunity there for them to do a comparison between the M1 Pro and the M1 Max versus the M2 Pro and M2 Max. So maybe there's a little slide presentation for the MacBook Pro.
But they're not going to update the MacBook Pro right now. They didn't come out until April.
They said that. Well, that was the MacBook Pro came out. When did it come out? It was a little while ago.
Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, not April. Let me see.
The fall.
Did that not come out in the March?
No, this was the fall of some time.
Maybe you're right. October or something.
Yeah, I think it was October. And the idea here, too, is it would just be like a spec bump. So that would make sense.
There's not going to be much different there.
So that would make sense. But the other stuff, it's like, I feel like for the iMac, it's like the iMac should get an M2 bump, but that probably doesn't need any stage time. Just put that on the website. Even same for like the Mac Studio. It's like that does, just make the bump happen. You don't have to talk about it. The Mac Mini, we had heard that maybe you'd get a redesign, which was going to be exciting, and that would constitute some stage time. I think Mark Gurman said it wouldn't get a redesign, so right. I'm also even more confused on now why they'd even bother talking about that. Just do a spec bump. It's like I feel like a lot of this stuff could just be a press release or just updates on the site. I don't know what's going to fill out an event, which makes me a little wary on what we could see, unless I'm missing something, unless they do Mac Pro.
Right.
And unless the event is, it's iPads, it's M2 Pro and Max in the MacBook Pro, and then they could be like, oh, we got one more thing. We get the M2 Extreme. But it seems a little the puzzle pieces don't fit, in my opinion, right now. So maybe something changes between now and September or October, but seems a little weird, right?
Yeah, no, I agree. The more because at first you're like, of course they're going to be talking about Macs, but now I'm like, I don't actually know what they're going to talk about. I guess one question is, and I looked it up. It was the MacBook Pros in October of 2021, so I got that mixed up. I was mixing it up with the Mac Studio, which came out in the spring. But the reason I'm bringing that up is, do you think we might see something completely new? Because the Mac Studio was not rumored until like the day before. We were kind of expecting like a Mac Mini, but that didn't come. Do you think it's possible we might see a completely new computer with a completely new name?
I'd love to see that. In my dreams, I dream about new Macs, but I don't think so, just because I don't know what product category is where there's a gap. Because I feel like right now they've done a pretty good job of rounding out what we've got. We've got the MacBook Air, MacBook Pro. We've got the Mac Studio and the iMac, Mac Pro. I'm trying to think what the computer would be. I mean, there have been rumors about an iMac Pro, a new Pro Display XDR, the Mac Pro, a larger MacBook Air. Like, those are in the works, but they don't sound like they're ready in time.
Right.
So I don't know what else. Like, what would be the wild card we'd see? I don't know.
The only thing I could think is a 27-inch iMac of some sort, but we heard that that's not coming until next year because of the mini LED issues. Or something to that effect. Yeah, I don't know. And some part of me also thinks that the Mac Studio is the replacement to the 27-inch iMac, which is kind of annoying, but I just have a feeling that's the case. But yeah, I'm trying to think. I mean, maybe it is just spec bumps across the board, and that's what they fill the time with. Like they'll go on for like 20 minutes about how the M2 Pro and Ultra are so much better. They're going to do the exact same slides that they always do, but they're just doing it with the M2 Pro and Ultra, or sorry, not Ultra, Max. And then that's just how they filled the time. That seems very possible. I guess that's kind of what they did with the MacBook Air. Yeah, it had a new design, but they didn't really talk about the design that much. They just talked about the processor.
I don't know. I'm excited for September, and then after that, we'll see, I guess. I mean, if September is really as jam-packed as the rumors suggest, and we get AirPods, Apple Watch, and iPhone, then I'll be happy. Because then also my money's gone, because I just bought 3 new Apple products and accessories. So I don't know what October will bring. We heard the headset's coming in January now, which that just keeps getting kicked down the road every couple of months. So who even knows about that? But I don't know. I mean, I think that Apple's in a good place with the Mac line, and obviously the M2 needs some updates, but I don't know if that needs or demands stage time. So I don't know.
I don't think they need to actually do much. It's just they usually do. So what are they going to do? I guess it's possible that they could, instead of doing watch, phone, AirPods, they could do watch, phone, HomePod. And then at the next event, it's AirPods, and they do the AirPods Pro 2. Maybe they have an updated AirPods Max or something. And then they fill in with M2 Pro, M2 Max. Maybe that's more of and then the iPad. And then that could fill up an entire thing, I think. Because, I mean, I don't think we're expecting to see a new HomePod this year. But if it doesn't seem crazy that maybe that would be ready to do like with the iPhone.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm curious. I guess... I mean, we're always kind of in the slow time right now, so I'm curious once we get closer, we'll see. What always seems to happen is like once iOS 16 is out, there's like references to other things that are going to come out, so maybe we'll see something there. But it's a mystery right now what's going to be happening in the fall. So who knows?
I'm trying to think of what else.
Mark Gurman also said
he
said maybe 2. So maybe we don't see a second event. So who knows?
Yeah, I guess it's possible. But I'm trying to think of what other products we might get mentioned. They usually save the services for the spring. So I don't think we'll really talk about that. Maybe an Apple TV, like maybe there's new hardware, but that's not rumored at all. So, I mean, yeah, who knows? It's tough to predict right now because it's actually the reason it's tough to predict is because everything's so good that you don't see why it needs to be updated at this point in kind of a rushed manner. Like we know the iPhone's coming, we know the Apple Watch is coming, and probably a new iPad. But other than that, like everything it doesn't need to be updated, and it's not usually updated. So I guess we'll find out. But yeah,
I'm finally like in a good place with my computer. I was thinking how much I love the M1 Max, right? We have the M1 Max, MacBook Pro, and how good it is at tasks, and how like I have no complaints. Like I don't even know like when the M2 Pro version comes out, I don't know if I'm going to even feel the need to upgrade because this one's so good. I feel like I'm in a good groove with my Apple devices, and now it's always like that. We got to wait. It's like we got to wait another month. I mean, the phones are going to come out in a month, which is crazy. Yeah. We'll give our buying advice and tips and all that stuff, but it's now just like we're just kind of waiting around for any little morsel of news, which is nothing. It's a battery percentage. That's what was the big story this week. It shows you where we're at in the Apple news cycle.
Yeah, which is interesting. That I don't know. I agree. It is the first time in a long time where I'm very happy with all my products. Like, there's not one thing that I'm like wishing I could change or like replace. And if it came out tomorrow, I'm doing it. Like, even the AirPods Pro, the only reason I want the new version is because mine are old, but not because they're bad. You know, like they're actually really good. And I just kind of want the updated one because battery life, that kind of stuff kind of degrades over time. Same with the iPad. I have the 12.9-inch iPad Pro. Well, the M2 is not going to change my life. I already have the mini LED display. The form factor is already great. My iPhone. Yeah, the new camera is going to be nice to get the extra resolution, but the screen's basically going to be the same. The form factor is basically going to be the same. MacBook Pro. I love that M1 Max, like you were saying, and there hasn't been a time where I am like, man, I really want this to be better. Unlike when I had the Intel 16-inch MacBook Pro, where pretty much every time I would export, I'd wish it was better. It's kind of crazy. Like, really what I want is like, I just want more of the products. Like, I wish I had the Mac Studio, but that already exists. That's interesting. It's kind of the first time that's happened.
It's funny because when we had those old MacBook Pros, I always used to dream about like, what would it be like if I had like a Mac Pro? Like how much faster would this video render, or what else could I do, and this and that. Now it's like, yeah, there's a Mac Studio with an Ultra chip, but this chip is totally fine. It's like I'm going to shave a couple of seconds off, whatever it is. It's like I feel like I'm happy with where things are, which is nice because I feel like not so long ago, 2 years ago, Apple was in a totally different space with the Mac. They needed a Hail Mary. They needed to do a 180 and really fix a sinking ship, which was all the issues with the MacBook Pro, and they've done a good job. I gotta say, I'm happy with Mac OS. I'm not really excited about Ventura. Could care less about that, but everything else is looking good. I'm excited. Except my AirPods. I've been having so many issues with my AirPods Pro lately, and I'm mad because I don't want to fix them because the new ones are coming. Basically,
I thought you got them fixed.
Well, I got one of the issues fixed, but the larger issue that arose during that process, which I don't know how this happened, but the button on the back of my case broke, I guess. So I can hold it down for like 5 minutes and it will never go into pairing mode, which is a problem if you ever try to reset things. And what happened at the Apple Store, and I don't fault the technician because he was probably trying to get me in and out of there, was that when I had the issue with the AirPods Pro themselves, the firmware issue, he couldn't repair them with the case because my button didn't work. So he put them in the demo case, paired them that way, and then put them back in my case and just said, okay, did this work? You can just go on your way. Because basically it seems like when you pair the AirPods, the case just puts the AirPods into a pairing mode. The case, it's not like the AirPods are tied to a specific case, if that makes sense.
It's like a dumb case.
From what I understand.
It just sends a signal to the AirPods of what to do.
Right. The problem is that a couple of weeks ago, like a week or two ago, I got to the gym in the morning and I took my AirPods out, put them in my ear, and they didn't connect. I was okay, this is weird. So I went down to do the little AirPlay thing, swiped down to go to Control Center. They didn't show up. That's weird. Sometimes it happens, whatever. Restarted the iPad, nothing. And it was weird is that they were in noise cancellation mode. So I knew that there was battery on them. It just wasn't pairing. Tried on the iPhone, same thing. They didn't show up. Basically, it seemed like the AirPods had just not like factory reset, but like they just like lost their memory of what they were connected to. Like they wouldn't show up. I couldn't manually Bluetooth to them. I couldn't do anything. And when, you can open up the case and then put it next to the device that should like show a status, it said, oh, you can share your audio to these AirPods, which is great. But then it's like, oh, hold down the back button for like 20 seconds until it goes into pairing mode. And my button just like would not work. So to make a very long and boring story short, instead of going back to the Apple store, I took my wife's AirPods Pro case, I put them in there, I factory reset them, put them back in my case, and it still was like dropping. It would like work for like 5-10 minutes, and then it would just like lose the connection, just like not show up. Like it was going into like this weird rogue state. So I put them back in. Basically what I did is I took her AirPods, put them in that case, put my AirPods in her case, and they've worked okay since then. But I think that case is broken. Something's weird about that. This whole long story to say is that I want to get them fixed, but I don't want to pay anything because they're out of warranty and the new ones are coming. So I'm sort of stuck in this death loop of flaky AirPods. So I'm ready for AirPods Pro 2. I'll just say that.
Yeah, I never got my AirPods Pro back from that hotel I stayed at because I just totally forgot, and now they don't show up anymore. So it's just like, yeah, whatever. But I'm using the AirPods 3, which are good. I like them, but I do kind of miss the noise cancellation and the transparency mode. I kind of forgot what it was like. So now, yeah, I'm ready for them too. I'm trying to think. I would also like to see AirPods Max, a new version, and I don't think that's happening, but I would love for it to, 1, have a better case, 2, have some sort of wireless charging, and 3, if it can actually support lossless audio. The lossless seems like the only one that will happen if they do update them. Everything else is kind of a crapshoot. And now that they're saying, the rumor is 2015, or sorry, with the iPhone 15 next year, that's when we'll see USB-C. I'm going to guess we're not going to see AirPods Max 2 until then, if there even is a version 2.
Yeah, and lately I've just given up on using the case altogether. Like I know like there's there's a phantom drain that happens when they're not in the case, but I got this like Grove made like headphone stand. I just keep them on there because I was tired of having to get in the drawer, get the case out, put them on. It's like it was just too cumbersome. So the case was a horrible decision from Apple. What I also would love to see with AirPods Max and really AirPods Pro 2 is faster pairing, and better auto switching. The auto switching from everyone I've talked to is horrible. So if there's a way they could switch that, maybe they I don't know if they're going to do like a new audio chip or they can give a little bit more processing power to that, but some kind of better audio handoff would be nice. I'd also love to see if they can't fix the auto switching, multiple device connections. Like if you can connect your iPhone and your Mac to AirPods at once, which I know Bluetooth, whatever version of the latest Bluetooth version does this on plenty of other headphones, that'd be nice to see too. But the auto switching it was so bad that I just turned it off because it was so unreliable and unpredictable with how and when it switched.
Yeah, no, exactly. I have it on some of my devices, and when it works, it's like, man, this is the future. This is great. For instance, on my iPhone to my iPad, for instance, if I get a phone call, I guess I could just answer it on my iPad, but for whatever reason, I don't use handoff. I just don't do that. I always answer on my phone. So like when I do answer on my phone, it automatically switches my AirPods to my phone so I can just talk through my AirPods. That usually works pretty great. But those times when it doesn't, it might be the most infuriating piece of tech that I have currently in today. Like, is it the most infuriating of all time? No, definitely not. It's still pretty good. But in today's landscape, that's the time when I get most frustrated with my products. And you would think that Apple would not be making those products. Like, that seems like I'm throwing shade here, but that's a Samsung feature right there, like where it just doesn't work, but it's very annoying.
The idea was great, and the few times I used it, like when it works, I was like, oh my gosh, like, this is great. But then like it just starts to not work consistently enough, or like it starts to work inconsistently more than it works consistently. Then you just turn it off because it's horrible. So that's horrible. I will say though, like the one saving grace to this is I love AirPods with the Apple TV. That is a really nice combo. Though I will say, which is weird, is so you can connect AirPods to any Apple. I didn't know you could do it with any Apple TV. I thought it was only the newer one. I have an Apple TV HD, an older one. Yeah. You can do it with the old remote, but the limitation is you can only do one AirPod set. So at night, I finally was clearing out old boxes from when we moved, and I was like, oh, I have the Apple TV. I'm going to set it up in our bedroom so we can watch TV now. The baby's moved to a crib in the other room, so now we can finally watch TV in there and actually have the lights on, and it'd be nice to actually do anything in there. So now that we have the TV set up, we were talking about sound, like we don't want to wake her up, and like the room's right next to us. Like I don't want to have, loud volume. So we said, well, we could do the AirPods. The problem is that with the older Apple TV, you could only do one set of AirPods. So now we're like doing like the one bud thing where I have one bud and she has one bud and we're watching it. And I'm just like, this is
that's not the same.
A terrible limitation. I know. So now I'm like, do I want to buy an Apple TV 4K just to have this 2 headset experience? But that's like, it's stupid overpriced. It's like $120.
Yeah, that's not the best reason to buy an Apple TV.
Especially since I have an HD TV in there. So
yeah, if you just got like a new 4K TV for your bedroom, then okay, maybe. But even then, that's still a tough sell.
No, I have an HD. It's like we have like, a 55-inch Samsung HD. And it's like, I love TVs, but there's some instances where it's like what you've got is good enough. And like that one actually looks pretty good for like a regular HD TV. So
yeah, in our bedroom, I stole, quote unquote, stole. I didn't steal it, but I took it from the Techno Buffalo office when we were clearing that out. That it's the original Google TV. Oh,
the Google
from
TV.
Sony. Yeah. I love that thing. I remember looking at it at Best Buy, like, man, that's the coolest design TV. And now I got one for free in my bedroom. It actually looks pretty good. I think it's 720p. Like, I don't even know if it's 1080. But, laying in bed, watching TV, it looks great. Got the Apple TV HD hooked up to it. No problem. Still works. And that's the extent of... I don't even own an Apple TV 4K, even though I have a 4K TV.
You don't?
Once I finally upgrade to an OLED TV or whatever the next version of TV I get, then I will make that plunge. But for now, it's like my TV sucks anyway. What am I going to use a 4K for, even if it's like 4K?
I mean, the Apple TV, like to give Apple credit, like I don't know how old that Apple TV HD is that I have. It's pretty old, but the OS still like runs really good on it. Like it's fast. I don't really have any issues. Like it's like you're not going to get a speed thing. It's really just depending on what device you have hooked up to it. So right. And what's weird too is
once I have HDR and like real good 4K ability, then I'm gonna want it. But for now, I really don't care.
Am I the only one that doesn't like the built-in TV apps? Like I feel like everybody these days, I'm surprised how so many people, they don't have a streaming box. They just use the apps built in, and I hate I won't do that because that's when it gets super slow. So
I have. Well, you bought the LG C1, right?
Yes.
Or C1, yeah. So you got your OLED TV. I bought the C2 as my desktop monitor, but that still has the same interface as the bigger TVs. And I still because I have that set up in my office and I have the PS5 plugged into it. I'd still rather use the PS5 than the built-in apps.
Yeah.
Even though it actually might be a better experience to use the built-in apps than this PS5. Nah, I don't know why. I just don't like it. I think we're on the same boat with that.
I think it's an older mindset from us because I think that we remember back in the day, like the Google TV that you have is like that was like the early day of smart TVs. I remember like it had a web browser that was insane. Yeah. But for most people, it was adding smart functionality to the TV they already had. So it was buying Rokus and stuff. And I just, in my mindset, I'd rather have a dedicated box that can handle that better than the TV. Though I will say, to a lot of manufacturers' to give them all credit, not only is the experience getting better, but a lot of the times the benefit of using the built-in app is that it actually like supports all the TV stuff. Like if like you have an HDR TV, like it'll work with that. So that's something to think about. But I don't know. I just I was telling my wife, it's like I want to get an Apple TV 4K just so we don't have to share headphones. But I'm like, that's a kind of a waste of $120 or whatever it is to buy
when it has everything built
just for that. I know, and we'll only get the new remote. Yeah. But there's
because you know what you could do. But yeah,
tell me, give me the answer.
What makes sense, the most sense, is that you should unplug your Apple TV 4K from the C1 and put that in the bedroom, and then just use the C1 apps.
Oh, but no, I like the Apple TV though, and you know what I will say is
no, I agree, but I'm just saying that actually makes the most sense.
Or Apple, it must be a hardware limitation because that must be sort of a processing thing to have those two set up. Or
I didn't even know that. I didn't even know that you could do multiple headphones on the 4K. I thought it was only one all the time.
From what I've read, as long as I'm interpreting Apple support community officially, and like I'm actually reading it correctly, you can do multiple on the 4K or like whatever the newer models are. Maybe even the newer HD, but I've got the older one. So something to think about. I like the Apple TV, so stick with it. But that was like my latest Apple troubles have been with that, and the AirPods have been driving me nuts. But I love the AirPods so much, I'll stick with it. But hopefully AirPods Pro 2 soon. Matt, is there anything else before we wrap things up? We divulged into a dark area.
That actually shows what the second potential Apple event is going to be is the fact that we talked about AirPods and Apple TV for not half, but a good 10, 15 minutes. That just shows you what we're expecting. Going into it, I think we both thought there would be more, but now that we kind of went through it, it's kind of looking grim. I'm not sure. I'm
more convinced, or I'm more skeptical that we would actually see an event at all. Like, unless there's enough with the iPad to be worthy of an event, with the iPad Pro in its current state, and even with the base model, assuming that's ready to go, just not a lot of other stuff there to fill out an event. So I don't know. So I guess TBD on that. Put a pin in it for now. We'll see what changes between now and then. But we will bring you the latest if we hear more. As always, we want to hear from you guys. Again, that number for the hotline, 949-354-3508. What streaming TV box do you use, if any? And what are your thoughts on the Apple TV, on iPad Pro, on the Mac? We want to hear from you guys. We appreciate your insights, so let us know. Also, be sure to subscribe to the Apple Circle Podcast YouTube channel, where we post full episodes and clips. Lots of good stuff on there. Also, be sure to find the audio version wherever you listen to podcasts. We're on Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, Overcast, Apple Podcasts. We're everywhere. And also to leave us a rating, a review, because that would certainly help others discover this little podcast wherever they're listening to podcasts as well. As always, we appreciate you guys watching and or listening. We'll see you right back here next week on another episode of the Apple Circle Podcast.